And this is a very bad precedent for me, and I shouldn't have allowed myself to be talked into it. But my friends at the Daily Signal have said, if you did some video stuff, we could use that as well. I don't think they've had a really good look at me. So I went and I said, well, let's see if we can get somebody who's more attractive than I am on the program this morning. Not really for that, but we're doing this as a video and audio broadcast. It'll be up at dailysignal.com at some point in the future, knock wood. And he is notably somebody who's blowing up paradigms all over the place. He is now the Republican nominee for lieutenant governor in a race that, gosh, every 4 years after the presidential election, Virginia's executive branch goes up for election, and usually it is red meat for the Washington, D.C. media. Not so much this year because of the fire hose that President Trump is running outside of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, but the paradigm he's blowing up is the long-held axiom that radio people, though popular in their own world, don't wind up translating that into electoral popularity. Everybody always wants to say, Joe, you should run for this, or John, you should run for that. And you usually, I think Rush Limbaugh used to say, the political landscape is littered with the corpses of radio people who misunderstood that. And to be fair, the most popular radio person has probably got a 15 share or maybe a 20 share of the ratings. That doesn't come close to winning an election. But John Reid, who you may read about in the national press as derisively labeled radio show host turned politician, is a lot more than that. And he's on with us. John, he is now officially the lieutenant governor nominee here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Congratulations, first and foremost. Let me say that, John. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, well, it's an exciting day. I can feel the responsibility kind of on my shoulders. And, the way this came about was my main competitor, who was a longtime supervisor up in Northern Virginia in Fairfax, a gentleman by the name of Pat Harity, made the decision. And I think it was a pretty selfless decision on his part to drop out because he was having a lot of health problems. And I think he recognized that it takes a lot to campaign, a lot of physical stamina, and he made the decision to drop out. And I appreciate the fact that he made that decision because it gives us a chance as Republicans to unify and to have a long runway to get ready for the fall instead of beating each other up and spending a lot of money, which we don't have because the Democrats are going to have a heck of a lot of money.
Yeah,
and so now,
yeah.
Oh yeah, so now I'm feeling excited, but also the responsibility of getting out and talking to people who didn't listen to my radio show, who've never met me, maybe have never even heard my name, and showing that I'm the real deal, that I'm a Reagan conservative. I used to work for Ronald Reagan, worked for George Allen when he was in the U.S. Senate. I'm not just a radio host, and I really am excited about introducing myself to people and earning each and every vote that's out there in the Republican Party. And quite frankly, I think there are a lot of Democrats who are fed up with the way their party has behaved since the riots of 2020 and the COVID disaster. And I'm not ceding any votes. I'm going to ask them to support me because I'm reasonable and I'm responsible, and I will bring the kind of leadership that I think people expect in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Well, certainly we see the behavior of Vice Chair of the Democratic Party, David Hogg, out there.
Yeah.
And certainly if a Republican behaved that way, the Democratic Party would be out there saying, "Come join us." Don't be it. So I think you have a winning strategy. Plus, you've put the shoe leather into it, rather than a lot of folks who just traffic on perhaps what could be perceived as popularity already. You've been out for months now, going around a very large state with a lot of very powerful, county committees, meeting with them. How is that going? Because I know Pat Harity, the supervisor you mentioned, was well thought of, but not well known outside of Northern Virginia. How is the ground game going? Because it needs to continue if you're going to be successful in November.
Yeah, I've got an event tonight. It's here in the Richmond area, but and I don't know whether there'll be 20 people there or 100 people there. I'm just not sure, but it doesn't matter. You got to get out and talk about issues. You got to listen to people. This, Joe, if you're a talk radio host, one of the key components is listening to your guests so that you can actually come up with a decent response and probe the issues. And that's something that has been really remarkable. I hear common themes, different issues, but common themes when I'm in Bristol in Southwest Virginia, when I went to Damascus to see the cleanup that's happening after the flooding there. And
Mhm.
then when I'm in Arlington and Alexandria, suddenly people in Northern Virginia have the same worries about whether they're going to have a job tomorrow.
Sure.
It's because of the federal budget cuts. And I hate to break it to everybody, with $36 trillion in debt, dramatic changes are going to have to be made. But there's some common themes here. Virginians want economic stability and prosperity. They want to know that if they lose their job, there's the chance in short order that they'll find another job. And that's going to take somebody like a Glenn Youngkin, like a Winsome Sears, like me. I was the editorial communications director for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. I worked with a lot of these startup companies and big Fortune 500 companies. You need someone who can go out and sell Virginia and make sure that we don't throw away the things that make people want to come to the state, like your right to work, like a reasonable minimum wage that's not, backbreaking to the average person who's trying to start a restaurant or a basic business. Not allowing the regulation to crush people. And I think my experience will allow me to articulate that to the general population, convince them that we are the right party to put their faith in. And you could bet I'm going to raise Cain at the Capitol to make sure that we don't lose our competitive advantage. That's important for Virginia going forward.
Well, and talk about this on a grand scale, because obviously New Jersey and Virginia are the two states that have executive branch elections right after the presidential year. So there's a lot of that, but there's also some congressional races because President Trump called people into his administration
Right.
that are going to be happening as well. Break through the clutter of the narrative that it's a referendum on President Trump and his administration versus what's happening in Virginia, especially given Northern Virginia's employment being in the swamp and these numbers, because I still say that there's got to be prosperity for everyone, especially if the value of our dollars go up, John.
Yeah. I've got a lot of faith that President Trump, as brash as he sometimes is, wants America to succeed. All these people who hate him, I'm so tired of arguing about his personality. I will tell you, I think he wants America and Americans to be successful financially and culturally. I think his heart is in putting us in a good place. Now, it's rough right now. $36 trillion in debt, and these cuts and the turmoil and the swamp kind of fighting back these days. It's rough. And so we're all going to have to get to the summer and to early fall and see where things are. But I think we'll be in a good place in Virginia, largely because of Glenn Youngkin's excellent leadership as governor. I mean, you have a Christian man who I think keeps turning the other cheek. I mean, how many times has this guy been abused by the Democrats and he still won't lash out to him? So he's a pretty decent guy. He's got more patience than I do, to be honest with you. And he's a CEO, so he understands the business element to every bill that goes through the legislature. And the social justice warriors are clueless about that. They're motivated by emotion and what they think is the right thing. Governor Youngkin has led us well, and I think Winsome Sears will do that. And Jason Miyares has a business mindset, and I'm going to bring that. And I want to be the spokesperson for the state in the role of lieutenant governor.
John Reid, what's your website? We have a break coming up here. You know
Yeah.
that being a radio guy, but what's your website?
Yeah, it's johnreid4virginia.com, all spelled out. The last name's REID, johnreid4virginia.com.
So the question is, why do they do it? Why is the constant? It's signal gate, it's signal app flap, as I call it. The misquoting, the Chairman Powell is a loser. Karl Rove on TV saying he's dropped 10%. All this due process stuff, and Chris Van Hollen and Governor Healy in Massachusetts talking about due process now. That's their word of the week. David Hogg, all of this. Why do they do this? For the 1 or 2 percentage points? And yes, most of it is geared towards the midterms. That's their precious. They want to win the midterms. The progressive mind wants to win congressional control at least, so that they can try to push any of President Trump's agenda under a rug somewhere and hopefully lay the seed for 2028. But I think some of it has to do with these next year elections in Virginia as well as in New Jersey, and the congressional races that will happen there for senators and for the Congress people, like Marco Rubio's seat in the Senate, that may change in the percentages there. John Reid is one of those folks who wants to fight those headwinds, and he knows those headwinds because he was there. He ran with many years for Senator and then Governor George Allen. You mentioned you even worked in the Reagan world. You've been in the Middle East. You've seen all these things. I mean, I always wondered, why in the world did you want to do radio after all of that? He was a successful radio show host in the capital of the Confederacy. Oops, I said that. I shouldn't have said it that way. In Richmond, Virginia. John Reid for lieutenant governor in Virginia. Talk about those headwinds, and more importantly, the apathy that I hear all too frequently from people who get excited to turn out for Republican presidential elections and then go home and don't get heard from again for 4 more years, but will complain when things don't go right at the state level. Talk about that, breaking through that wall, John.
Yeah. Well, look, I think Donald Trump excited the base because he was a politician who leveled with everybody. And he just told you what he was going to do. He wasn't trying to sweet talk everyone. And he picked issues that, quite frankly, a lot of Americans feel very worried about. Illegal immigration being one of them.
Sure.
The economy and whether or not you can actually move up the ladder. I mean, look, I know things are rough right now. It's the first 100 days of the Trump administration. We're $36 trillion in debt, and some dramatic, very painful decisions are being made. This is not unlike what you would do if you were a CEO and you came in and you looked at the ledger and said, oh my God, the company is hemorrhaging money and we've got 10 products and only one of them's making money for us. I mean, you would have to let some people go. You would have to recalibrate. It's awful. It's hurtful. I've lost my job before. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. I'm not laughing or mocking anyone.
Mm-hmm.
I think Republicans should be empathetic, but we also have to be honest and say, this is not sustainable. So Trump is making, I think, some reasonable and responsible decisions that are painful. And I think that's going to shake out and we're going to be in a better place. I hope it's this year because I got a lot riding on that, right?
That's right.
But yeah, I decided to get into this race because I think we've got Trump in Washington trying to fix things up there, beating back the bureaucracy. And we need people who are tough and who have a good moral compass and a good sense of right and wrong in both campaigning and leadership here. And we've gotten that, thank God, with Glenn Youngkin, Winsome Sears, and Jason Miyares for 4 years. And I think it's imperative if we want to be competitive with Tennessee and North Carolina and South Carolina and Florida and Texas, who could really eat our lunch if we're not careful. We need responsible leaders to be at the Capitol in Richmond. And I just think we're going to be in a good spot when we get through the summer and people start saying, do we want to return to the Ralph Northam overzealous, tyrannical attitude, or do we want reasonable, responsible people who are trying to let you live your life? And I'm one of these Republicans. As a gay Republican, I know everybody freaks out about that. Don't freak out about it. I'm about freedom. I'm about freedom. I want you to be able to live your life, to worship as you see fit, for your church to be completely autonomous. You do what you want to do, and let me do what I want to do. And I'm going to stand up for your rights as lieutenant governor. You're not hiring me as your pastor. I'm not trying to be your pastor. I'm trying to be a reasonable public official who will protect your rights. Whether they match up with my beliefs or not is irrelevant. I want to protect your rights. And I promise you, the Democrats don't have that attitude. They want your submission. And we've got to win to stop that.
Well, and you bring up sensitive topics and subjects. Obviously, the key is the economy. Can I earn a living? Can I take care of my family,
Yeah.
John? But it seems like traditional Republicans and our inability to grapple. Like after the Dobbs decision, I draw the metaphorical cartoon for people of somebody who has just tossed a boiling hot octopus covered in oil, because that's what conservatives seem to be like. Oh my God, what do I do with this? What do I do with this? But we're staring down the barrel in Virginia of the most permissive abortion law on the
Mm.
planet becoming
It's
enshrined.
extreme.
And
The Democrats are extreme on this.
and
But
that's the
honest.
point I want to make is that they're the extremists in this. Are
Yeah.
you hearing that on the campaign trail?
Well, I think people are, we need to talk about it. I mean, everyone has told me, oh my God, John, don't talk about abortion. Look, I'm pro life. I'm not going to lie to you. That is my belief. If you're in my family, that is what we generally believe. Um, I think I'm in the minority probably in Virginia, which hurts me. I think that's not a good reflection of our culture and society at the moment. But I think I owe it to the public to be honest that that's how I assess this. But with this amendment, the Democrats, they haven't restrained themselves at all. They haven't come up with, where do we agree? And that's where I start with every conflict politically is where do we agree? Where do we overlap? And I would have thought after what Ralph Northam did to his own party, the Democrats would have said, "Whew, you know what? We could probably win on first and second trimester. I think they think they probably can, and they don't want to, and our people are often scared to talk about it, but we shouldn't talk about third trimester. They have gone so extreme that day of birth abortion is
Right.
now acceptable. If this passes, this extreme amendment, day of birth abortion for any reason will be acceptable. Now, look, I have a lot of friends who are pro choice who will argue with me nonstop. When I tell them that, when I show them the writing and say, this is what this means, they wince and they say, wow, that's too far. And so
John
it's
Reid.
incumbent upon us to talk about it.
John Reid is visiting with us. We're going to continue this conversation because I want you to go to dailysignal.com and watch this when we post it there. But I've also got more questions for John than I have minutes left in the broadcast day. Talk Media Network going to pull the plug on us in about 10 seconds there. So, John, sit tight for a little bit. And then tomorrow, go to dailysignal.com and watch this. Until tomorrow, for all of us here, so long. And thanks for all the fish. Okay, so now we get to continue. Now the fun can begin. Now we're in
Yep.
the green room. But no, I actually just want to pick up on what you were saying about the issues running headlong into it, because if the Spanberger campaign wins and we don't change any of the makeup of the House and change the leadership there, we're looking at a lot of very radical bills, not just HJ1 going through, that Governor Youngkin record-setting veto
Vetoes.
that he has had over the last few years will all just go right through into law, and all these things that the governor has vetoed will become law. Talk about that case, because this is not just Winsome Sears and yourself and Jason Miyares getting to continue some of the work that's already been done, perhaps even doing more with a majority in the House, but the things that Governor Youngkin has been able to stop.
Yeah. Well, I'm putting together the top 10 bad bills from the Democrats this year. I
Typical
don't even have to
radio
go
guy.
back.
Typical
I don't
radio
I don't
guy.
even have to go
Really
back
top
5 years.
10.
The proposals that the Democrats actually put on the table are crazy. You know, insane things like if your kid overdoses for some reason at school, it's debatable whether you're going to call the parents. I mean, are you
Unbelievable.
serious? This isn't. This is exactly why the Democrats lost 4 years ago. I mean, Glenn Youngkin's a great candidate. He's a good looking guy. He's articulate. He's got a lot of money. I mean, he's the perfect candidate, right?
But
But
he
let's
put
be
in the
honest.
work.
He put in the work. He won because the Democrats screwed up and they told parents that they didn't matter. And nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to hear that. They will not accept it. And I think Republicans understand they're your children, and you get to raise your children with your values. And whether they align with mine or the guy down the street, that is not relevant. They're your kids. And the public school system has been hijacked by a group of radicals. And I think Republicans can push back on that. And the Democrats continue to want to spend. They won't give a tax break. I mean, remember when not everybody was lucky enough to be able to sit at home and do Zoom calls in their underpants every day during COVID,
Hey, I
right?
have more than my underpants on. Stop.
Some people actually had to get up, get in their truck, go do service calls, risk their lives, supposedly go. They had to go work like normal.
Yep.
And the gas prices were crazy. And Republicans were trying to give everybody a break. Like, let's take a 3-month holiday, and we'll let people keep more of the money that they're spending on gas without taxing. Oh no, Democrats weren't interested in that. And so time and time again, they talk a good game, like they care about the working people. But then no, they don't, because what are you working for? You're working for money, and the Democrats are constantly trying to take it from you. And when there's a crisis, they don't care. They don't give you a break. So I think there are a lot of issues where the Democrats have really developed a certain arrogance and an obnoxious attitude that the average person, when they hear about this, are going to say, yeah, is there anybody else who can help me? Well, here I am. I know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck. I wish I was Glenn Youngkin with all his money. I don't have that money. I understand this situation. And I think people are going to say, here's a reasonable, responsible person who's going to put my needs first and get out of my life. Let me live my life. I think most Virginians want that.
John Reid on with us. John Reid for Virginia.com.
Yeah. John Reid for Virginia.com.
Running for lieutenant governor, now the GOP nominee for lieutenant governor. Last case, and getting that message out requires a lot of shoe leather. I watched Bob McDonnell, Ken Cuccinelli, and Bill Bowling triangulate the state in ways I'd never thought. It was almost like a door-to-door knocking campaign. They were in every town every week. There was a rally, either the LG or the G. They were all over the place. Right. Is that commitment there on the ticket now? I know it's, oh gosh, hours old. Yeah. Yeah. But, are you going to hit every county to make that case? Because I really think that was what Glenn Youngkin and Winsome Sears and Jason Miyares did. Can you guys replicate that again this year?
I have no doubt that Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears, our candidate for governor, is going to work every single day. Jason Miyares, our attorney general, has done this. I mean, he was in the House of Delegates. I mean, I know they are committed, not just to their own political success, but to the political and practical success of Virginia citizens. And they like being out there. And I do too. And, I have tried to demonstrate since I started my campaign on January 27th. Easter Sunday was really the first day that I took the whole day off and spent it with my mom. I felt like that was, I thought that was important to take a day off. And then yesterday I wind up as the nominee, but I'm committed to being out there and really working hard. I've been doing 2 or 3 events a day, whether it's an interview like this or whether it's actually going out and sitting in a room with 20 people in a small county. And, some people are obnoxious and they would say, oh, I don't want to go talk to 20 people. I need to hear what people in smaller counties in Virginia have to. Everybody knows what people in Fairfax and Richmond and Norfolk think. I need to know what people, in Giles County are thinking and saying. And sometimes our political leaders ignore the people who don't have, big towering buildings with multi-million-dollar corporations. And I'm a native Virginian. I have respect for everybody in the state, and I'm going to do my best to meet as many people, whether they're wearing, fancy suits or whether they're wearing overalls. I want to know what people are thinking and how I can help them.
John Reid for lieutenant governor. It's John Reid for Virginia. See, that's a radio guy's attitude. So you learned quickly is that, it's not the big crowds because most people are only listening to the radio one at a time. I was just reading a scholarly piece about podcasts. And what we're doing here for Daily Signal is that most podcasts are only consumed by one person sitting there. So if you talk to broad strokes, then you're tuning out most of those people. Congratulations again. And I don't think it could have happened to a nicer guy. And
I appreciate it.
Watching. It's a long run. I think the voting begins in November, somewhere in mid-September. And
can you believe it? This 45 days of voting. I'm glad that we're not going to burn money and beat each other up with this primary, and we can get ready and focus and meet as we can leading into the general election of the fall.
Well, and do you need volunteers? Is the same website for volunteers and contributions, of course?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's funny you mentioned the contributions. Absolutely. The Democrats are going to have tons of money because all of those national Democrats are desperate to win Virginia. As you point out, it's New Jersey and Virginia on the ballot this year, and they want to win. And Abigail Spanberger's raised a heck of a lot of money. I'm, as I mentioned, I'm not rich. I can't write a check and make this happen. So I have been dependent on people who've known me for years, who know that I've advocated for responsible leadership and have some faith in me. And I'm going to try to earn that trust with more people. If you go to johnreidforvirginia.com, I hope you'll feel confident that I'm standing up for the things that we as conservatives believe in, and that I'll be bold and smart and aggressive about that. And if I can impose upon someone, even if it's a $10 donation, that helps. This stuff is crazy expensive. The last time I was around George Allen was 20 years ago, and the prices for everything are through the roof. It's just mind blowing. So
all the mailers alone, never mind the franking costs and everything. It's just but it's successful. We have a state senator, Luther Cyphers, who I think won his primary by mailers because nobody else in that race sent any mailers out. So most of the people I know are like, "Hey, have you heard?" And everyone had seen the mailers that had come out because it gets through the clutter. And I guess that's really the key. Bless you, sir. You have a great day. And I'm sure you have a lot of these lined up. So you've warmed up beautifully.
I'm so happy to talk to you. And I hope I'll see you. When I was a competitor of yours, I felt like we saw each other all the time out in and around Charlottesville.
Here's a little John Reid story. So we were just did the radio show in Concord, Massachusetts. And I was thinking of you while we were up there, John, because the last time you and I were together for radio was at the 400th anniversary of the oldest elected general representative body in the world.
In Jamestown.
In Jamestown. There we were, you and me. You were under your radio station tent. I was under mine, and looking around saying, nobody else thinks this is important. So I appreciate your efforts as always. You're missed on the radio. I'm sure they're filling in with you for you grandly. But I hope they don't get you back soon. So
I'm gonna work hard to make this successful for myself and, more importantly, for Virginia. I love this state and I love the people here.
Well, thank you, John. Happy trails.
Thank you.
Subscribe to get the news the legacy media won't tell you and only the Daily Signal can bring to you.